Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our inspirational interviews. Today, I have a dear friend to share with you. Before I introduce her, though, I want to remind you all that we are going live using StreamYard. So if you can grant StreamYard permission for us to see your name, that will be lovely. Feel free to ask questions and type in comments to the chat. We can have this be more of a community conversation. And I'm just delighted for you all to be here. And if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay in the chat and let us know your thoughts and questions. So today's guest is my dear friend, Annie Fain Barralon. And I'm just going to read her little bio to you, and then we'll bring her on. So Annie Fain is a native of the crafts and dance and music community of Brasstown, North Carolina, which is where I used to live. And she teaches a variety of classes, including book arts, clawhammer, banjo, and several styles of dance: Appalachian clogging, English waltz clog, Northwest Morris, and ball folk, which is from France, which she learned when she married into a French family. Annie Fain plays banjo and banjo uke for an all-women string band called Blue Eyed Girl, and has danced with Loafers, Glory Clog Morris, and the Greengrass Cloggers, and Dames Rocket, which was the dance team that I was on, led by Annie Fain. She sells her handmade books, gift cards, and original watercolors regionally, is a member of the Southern Highland Craft Guild, and as well as the creator and host of the podcast Fain House Radio, which I was recently interviewed on, and some of you may have gotten to listen to that interview. So without further ado, here's Annie Fain. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for, being open to the idea and all the good stuff.
Yeah. So is there anything you would like to add to the introduction I just gave you in terms of just describing a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing these days?
Well, one thing I would add is, as you were reading, I was thinking about how much I had to deal with my introverted self in order to now do the things I do now. And that I want all introverts out there to know, and extroverts, you can build your muscles in both directions. I recently had a Myers-Briggs test redone after years, and I used to be introvert all the way. I'm now right exactly in the middle. And I was like, okay, you can learn, how to go with that. Because now I am also performing and doing things I never thought I would ever do.
Yeah,
that came through.
Yeah. And another piece that I want to add, just to flesh out the picture of who you are a little bit more, is that you are a mama. You have two boys who are now 7 and 9, which I cannot believe, because I was like there when, well, one was a baby and you were pregnant with the other one. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a while ago. But that plays into your life significantly right now too, in terms of your time and energy. So I want to dive into this discussion of creativity and artistic expression as a component to health, to being a fully vibrant person. What are your thoughts on that as you've learned through the years in your own health journeys and
partly through my own health journey, partly through watching other people and story sharing, and partly through years of teaching young people and older people all different mediums. Clogging is different than book arts, but it kind of comes down to the same, openness to learning. So in a way, the medium doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
And just really realizing the definition of being a creative or being creative in general is very wide open. And I see it as basically encompassing everything, which on one hand is broad, but on the other hand gives everyone permission to have it and to feel it. And I really do think that we just are born loving having our hands in things. And it's a big part of us. For some people, it connects to spirituality or relaxation or mindfulness, other things we can talk about more later. But I think that it's really important from a health point of view to acknowledge that we have that in us
Yeah.
and that it's a way we can connect to joy or relaxation, like I was saying. But for example, I think people will judge it and they'll think it's not valid. I don't have time. I've got 2 kids. I'm squashed flat by a mountain, which is life. And that one of the ways to deal with being under that mountain is to choose a recipe and try it, and to go pick some flowers, and to really thoughtfully pick out your new favorite coffee mug and things like that. And to know that they are valid. It's all valid, which connects to us being valid. And yeah, there's so much I could say about it. So I don't know if that answers you clearly, but
yeah, well, let's just continue to explore it. So one of the things that we connected on when we first finally were like, let's be friends, because we kind of knew each other growing up, or knew of each other, I guess, kind of growing up in our individual craft, art, music communities. We connected, and I remember specifically you saying we have the same things, like it's this triad, right, where there's like body practice, whether that's like yoga or dance, or and then there's like craft practice. For you it's book arts and painting and drawing. For me it's pottery. And then what was the other one?
music.
Oh, music. Right, music. So yeah, so playing music. So those 3 things, and we like recognize that in each other, like, oh, we each have this triad of things going on. And and then you and I have also talked about the kind of other people's projection onto both of us that we've had throughout our lives, of like, oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky that you get to do these things. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Your response to that?
One pressure that happens outside of us is if you are multi-passionate, there's a pressure to choose one thing.
Yeah.
And I always felt like if I chose one, it would be like chopping off my arm, and I would be, what about the rest of me kind of feeling. But that doesn't mean that there isn't one that might come forward from a make a living point of view. And if you're, that's happened for you, like one's pulling forward, but it doesn't mean you stop the other ones.
Right.
And so in a way, it's a way to acknowledge ourselves without like just thinking, oh, if I don't choose one, I'm scattered. Well, that's not totally true. The other is about the lucky thing is, we both grew up in like creative families. So in that way, we are lucky we got born into that. But I know plenty of folks who grew up with creative families who they didn't choose that. Either they didn't want to, it's not their thing, or they didn't, realize that that's something that they really wanted to do and fought for it, kind of thing. Or I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have to fight for it, and it's not easy, and you have to want it so bad you'll go through a lot of pain to get it. Not pain like abusive pain, but the pain of how hard it is. And what happens with like social media, all the things, we all know this, you can project constantly on people. You look at a social media feed. I know that people look at mine and think, she's painting all the time. Whoo, that ain't true. It takes months and months and months of little bits of time to kind of get that in. Or with the banjo, I wasn't born playing banjo, that would be hilarious. I mean, I like the idea, but it doesn't really work that way. So I had to like want it so bad that it's almost like you have to be in touch with a part of yourself that like speaks up really loudly and tells you, I really, really, really want to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something else that's a little bit of a muscle. For example, I was traveling through France. That's where I met my husband. That's a whole nother story. I already was playing, certain instruments, and I'm like, there's enough of them, and I want to get good at the ones that I have. So I'm good with instruments in my life for my whole life. I was 30 at the time, and then I kept hearing wonderful diatonic accordion music, and it was so wonderful. I just couldn't stand it. I had to spend every last dime I had. I don't even know how I got home back to America. I think it was my first month's rent for when I was coming home for this accordion, and it called me so strongly. I had to answer that call. And if that's a very pure call, then you can't go wrong. And it means you'll find the money for your rent. You're going to find a solution. And so it's like, how do we get unmuddled from that channel of communication to know that it's a pure, real want and desire. And then that pure want and desire also is what feeds you to practice and to practice and to practice. So you can't just like have that instrument. You have to actually work on learning it and find teachers and find little bits of time to do it, and to fold it into your life. And if you're going to fold it into your life, especially as an adult, you really have to fight for it. And so if you see somebody doing something like that you admire, you can think, wow, they put a lot of time into that, a lot of care into that. And it means that if they're not born doing that, that I could too. I could do that too. Everyone can in their own shape and form, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it's inspiring, but it's not, none of us just learned to play an instrument in a day or like
No.
learned to do a certain dance step or
Yeah. And
hone
it's
a craft.
an emotional process. Okay. That's something that you and I have talked about before. Okay. Say you've played on the radio, you've performed your music, you know, and that was like fun and rocking for you. Then if you're in a different situation where you're like on a stage and it's playing for a contra square dance and then the tempo's super fast and, you know, and a panic can happen. And I think that's really real stuff. And I think that part of the challenge of the emotional side, which is also the benefit of it, you know, endeavoring in it or involving ourselves in it, is like being willing to be part of that emotional side. It is emotional. You feel like I can't do it. You compare yourself to people that are already beyond you, and all these things. So I would also say from an emotional health point of view that your willingness to dive in anyway means you've been granted the reward of learning it. And it feels even better because you've gone through your own emotional roller coaster to get there. So
Yeah. Yeah. And like I teach a lot about like identity evolution, like who we can become when we learn skills and allow ourselves to try things that are scary or to do things that we've never done before. Or to commit to a version of ourselves that doesn't exist yet. I mean, I think about like learning to play fiddle, which you have done, I have not done. But like, if anybody's been around a beginning fiddle player ever, it sounds like a dying cat. Like, it's not beautiful. And to make friends with the instruments to get a melodic, beautiful sound out of it it takes commitment, and that process really is about continuing to show up for that future vision of like, well, I'm going to be able to eventually play these fiddle tunes and, you know, play for a contra dance or play for, you know, a friend's wedding or whatever it is. But at the beginning, that vision isn't manifest, right?
that's
So,
right. And, you know, that's one thing I think that's very cool about the Vitality Circle that you offer is it's over a long period of time. And so you're proposing a small step and a small step in good community. And so that is exactly the same with a language. It's exactly the same, you know, with anything new you want to learn, any creative endeavor is small bits over time. And, you know, part of what I talk about in my new podcast project idea is that all those small, tiny bits really do matter. They really matter. And then they create a momentum. And then in that way, you didn't have to like force it or try so hard. It starts to carry you along and it starts to change you without you really doing much. You know, I don't want to say not doing anything, but you know what I mean? Like you're in the river and you just picked up your feet.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you floated. You can float.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like I learned a lot from you about this with artistic practice. That when boys were really little and you were like, I don't have time to get in the studio. I don't have time to, but you still kept these little projects that were portable. I remember that, portable projects that you could just take out if you were, you know, having dinner at somebody's house. You could be like, I'm going to work on this little sewing project or a little drawing thing or whatever. And I I remember the first time you showed, I think it was a skirt that you had done, I don't even know what it's called, that the technique.
It's I'm actually wearing that skirt because in honor of
Oh,
you.
really?
It's a woman named Alabama Channon, and she is part of the slow fashion movement, and everything is stitched by hand and highly stitched. And so it's supposed to take a long time. And she does reverse applique. So you're stitching and then you'll cut out the inside of it. And then you'll stitch the next leaf and you cut out the inside of it. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like a practice in the power of accumulation, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just remember being so blown away, like, oh my gosh, she just had like 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And then like over a few months, then this beautiful garment manifested. And that those little pieces, it's the same with habit formation. It's like, can you meditate for 2 minutes? And then that meditation practice gets established. Tiny, tiny little step, right? So, yeah. And that's really, tell us about your podcast too, because the podcast is really dedicated to this exploration of like, how do we practice creativity in the midst of our busy lives?
Yeah. I started to just realize, for example, when I had these two little boys, so I had a newborn and a 2-year-old and a really intense full-time job that has since then been divided into 2 jobs. So that says something about it. And it involved night times, and it was very, very intense. I had a husband from France who was dealing with being in a new country, and we live in a 1-room studio while we build our house. And so the list of stressors was like very long. But I also, what that meant was, including night times, that there's no place, or to maybe I played a tune here and there or whatever, but to like sit and do a whole painting or anything like that. And I remember it was just very painful. And I was confusing the heart, like, is it me being hesitant about being a mother, or is it just that I need certain other things too? And I think it was that I needed other things too. And when other kids are very small for those first 2 years, you're just probably not really going to get it unless you got a nanny or something like that. But then you would feel guilty you're not with your children. And I was determined to be with them no matter what, all the way. And so first it was like acknowledging that pain, that it's painful. And realizing, and I do also want to be a mother, right? And I know a lot of people, we deal with lots of emotional confusion during these times. And so then I'm like, okay, well, I can't. I remember talking to my mom about it. I didn't have a studio or anything like that. And she said, well, what you can do right now is like idea collecting. So I have all these notebooks and sketchbooks where I would see a page in a magazine, or I'd think a thought, or I would think of a sketch for a painting or whatever. And it made me feel like I was still engaging in my creative life, and that I would have all these books of ideas by the time I got spit out the other side, which did happen. But in the moment, it feels horrible. And you think you're never going to get out the other side of it. And so that's also where your friendships come in, and your health, and, things like Ayurveda, everything's connected. And so I think for the podcast, it was just really, really, really wanting to encourage people who feel squashed like that. And it happens to everyone because life just ain't easy all the time. And to encourage people to never, ever, ever give up. And it sounds simple, but it ain't always easy. That's what I say in my trailer. So I'm repeating myself there. And I'm trying not to cry too.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to cry on the interview. Anyway, here we go. Vulnerability. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Bring it on. It's totally welcome. Yeah. Well, and finding those pieces of your identity too, where you feel like, yes, I have this gift of being a mother now, but these pieces of myself that are creative and have that, it's like having that space in your day, but also in your mind to envision. And I love your mom's suggestion to just keep gathering, to do the gathering during that time.
Yeah. And when you have some camaraderie, that was the other idea for the podcast, is that there's a camaraderie. You're sharing stories. You're hearing what people went through to get where they are now. And it's all simple stuff. But us as humans love this connection. It makes us feel good. And I just think, on one hand, it's like, why are we talking about painting in an Ayurvedic realm, in the work that you're offering? But I definitely feel that it's very, very, very connected. The themes are the same. all the small things matter. Every tiny bit matters. You want to think we have this long-term metamorphosis that we're all going through. We need some good company in doing it. That creativity can be as a profession, or it could just be what you love to do, or it could be both. That anything you want like that is totally valid, including wanting to wake up feeling refreshed and using techniques that you share with people about what that means. And I also think it all connects to our spiritual self and who we think we are or know we are, and the fact that you can never completely know or understand yourself or everything. You know everything, you know nothing. And it's all the same thing in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It makes me think about James Clear is a habit researcher. He wrote a book called Atomic Habits, and he says that every action we take, as well as thoughts that we think, are a vote for who we want to be next. Right. So when we look at those tiny little pieces of like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm like nursing my child or up in the middle of the night or whatever, but it's like if the thought is there of like, ooh, I want to learn to make this different kind of art form, or there's a song idea, or a recipe I want to try, or whatever it is, then that's putting energy towards who we want to be next, or who we're becoming. And how quickly we can also do detrimental choices along those lines too, right? Of like, just being like, oh, well, that doesn't make money, so I'm not going to do it, or that doesn't, that's not meaningful to anybody else around me, so I can't do that. Or that we are very influenced by our culture, and that the fulfillment of artistic expression is so important in terms of us living fulfilling lives. Will you share a little bit about what that, this might be hard to put into words, but like, what does that feel like to you when you get to have like your time immersed, when you're in the creative flow? What does it feel like to you? What's that nourishment?
That's a really cool question. And I would love to hear like a list of like 25 people answering that in a row. That would be really cool. I'm sure people would say lots of similar things. And I also don't know why, but one of the first things that comes to my mind is like being around 7 years old. I don't know why. And maybe it's because it was one of the first times of like walking into a field or being outdoors by myself and feeling like so relaxed to be there. And I think in childhood, maybe we can tap that into that more, but also from a practical point of view, you have more time and space as a kid to do that. Not when you're in school, but you're not paying bills. You know what I mean? You don't feel the weight of the world on you. So for me, it feels like the most ultimate relaxed feeling I could feel. Like every worry and thought, everything is just not there. It's just not there. It's like just deeply, deeply relaxing. So I know that, people talk about, you're in the flow and all of that. And I'm sure there's something that happens, with your brain. But it's like this relaxation mixed with taking things that are like existing in the world and kind of putting them together in a way that is so delightful to you. And so I'm so happy that people love my paintings. That makes me so happy, but I can't think of everyone when I'm painting. I kind of have to only go through me because I can't imagine what other people might want because everybody's so different, right? And so I try to really stick true to just like, if I'm not sure what next step to take, I'll just wait till I feel like this little delight feeling. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's like delight mixed with a creation with total relaxation, with no weight of the world is on me at that time, which also includes having my door closed and my phone off and having, I love that feeling. So I don't know if that really kind of describes it, but.
Yeah. Well, and from more like medical, like if we put that into the terms of understanding and like what that's doing for stress relief, like for getting out of sympathetic nervous system into parasympathetic nervous system. And we know that that is so beneficial for overall health, for the functioning of all the systems in the body, for your body to feel fully nourished, and that's like the best medicine out there, right? We can pop pills all day long, but if we don't have that time where it's like, like all the clutter, all the chaos can clear, then we're not getting that boost, or the body is not able to just return to its basic state of health, really. Like the body knows how to do things, right? But we need to provide the conditions. And it sounds like, that creative time for you really supports that. And I would guess that most people feel that way too.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that it feels really good because it is good. It's good for you. It's really good. It feels good for a reason, And some of that answer I just gave was more with the making things and painting and everything.
Right.
The music and dance is really interesting because it's so different, because it's often done with other people.
Right.
But what's cool is, whether it's music or dance, you're not talking at the same time. So if you're like in the dance team that we were a part of, this is like English street dancing. Well, that's weird. Why do we do that? But it's so cool to hang out with a community of ladies where we're creating like group art project together. It's visual. It's meant to be danced in the streets, holiday times. And a lot of traveling has been happening between teams because of it. And, but you're not like talking. It's good to talk about what's going on in life. That's true. But it also feels very good to be near each other, creating something together, and not necessarily like talking through everything in a cerebral way. Same if you're playing tunes. So you find a fiddle or guitar or banjo, you're going to talk some so you could decide what tune to play. But you're kind of communing in a way without just talking. And when I traveled in other countries where English wasn't the number one, playing instruments was a very cool way, because once again, you're communicating very clearly, but it's not with words, and it's a different kind of relaxation and community also. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And I would also add that in those moments, there is kind of like, you have to be fully present. Like you're in a certain flow of like, your body has to be moving in rhythm with this whole other group of people, or your instrument needs to be in tune and in time with the other people. And there's a presence that is a flow that's different from the grocery list and the schedule for the next vacation and the thing that's due for work tomorrow. It's you have to be present, and that is a form of mindfulness that benefits body, mind, and spirit too. So beautiful. I feel like I could talk with you all day long. We have some comments, just validation of quoting you. You have to fight for it. Yes, yes, yes. And then I feel you, Annie Fain. And Mary Ellen just said, really nice discussion about self-validation, self-support, and how to be present in the moment. Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks for being here, Annie Fain. Somehow we just talked for a half an hour. Can you tell people where they can find you and hear and see more of what you offer?
Yes. Well, first, all the health stuff that you're all working on with Hannah is so creative too, and it's all super connected, and that's so great. And she's an awesome person to learn a lot from. So very, very cool. And I have a website. It's A Fain House, I think, at whatever.com. And then on Etsy, I have an Etsy shop, and I have my gift cards and art prints. And you can go to Etsy and put in, or you can Google Fain House Etsy and find it. And then for the podcast, it's Fain House Radio, and it's interviewing folks who are creating in the middle of things no matter what. And you can find it on Apple Podcasts and all the other places. And definitely say hey.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll post links with this interview in this group. And thank you so much for being here. I hope this conversation inspired lots of you to embrace
Never give
whatever
up.
creativities. Yes.
Never give up.
Final words. Never give up. Keep going, even if it's little tiny bits at a time. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Annie Fain, for being here. We'll
Thank
see you all
you.
soon.